Hi guys, welcome to this video. This is the 60 days to CAT series and we have a great video for you today. This is, I got this as a student request. I got this question. Your mind goes blank in the VARC section. What should you do? It's a great, fascinating question and we are going to discuss this today, right? It's a great video as well. You'll get solutions to your problems, practical, pragmatic solutions for your problems. Let's get started. Now, there are three cases when this happens, right? Three types of cases that you face, and when you finally, when you feel this kind of there is this mental status, right? It's your mind has gone blank, right? You feel as if there's some kind of inertia that you are feeling. You just can't seem to get through the attempt. Now, what is it? What are these three cases when you feel this mental inertia or status, right? If the mock is tough, now, when the mock is tough, remember everyone is going through it, right? You will have these mocks and section tests which will be super tough and you will feel as if you just can't crack it. Case number two, you don't like the kind of content featured in the test. Now, the biggest thing with VARC is that the nature of content, it keeps fluctuating. There might be some tests which are philosophy driven, others psychology, others sociology, some which use are a mixed bag. They have science and technology. At times, for example, a test might have climate change passages. Now, climate change and environment is something that we generally easily understand, and hence your perception of the test, right? This is very, very important. Your perception of the test, it changes with the nature of content, right? In the test, your perception also goes up and down, right? Now, this is the second case where you don't like the content. Your perception of the test is a negative one. Third case, when you're just not up for the test on the given day, you just don't feel like taking the test. These are the three cases that you couldn't possibly face, right? Case one, case two, and case three, right? Now, what do you do in each one of these cases, right? I have solutions for all three cases. Thing number one, case number one, when you have a super tough test, what do you do in this case? Remember one thing, there's one thing that you should be happy about. Everyone is screwed in such a test, right? So you should not really worry much about it. If it's a super tough test, you feel as if you can't crack the RCs, you immediately shift your focus to question selection, passage selection, identifying what you can solve, what you can skip. You change your track from pushing yourself to attempt a lot of questions. You immediately just take a step backwards. Make sure you identify the right set of questions. Now, how do you identify it? With RCs, the test is super simple. Read the first paragraph. If you feel comfortable with it, if you feel like committing to it, commit to that RC. Otherwise, mark it for review and come back to it later, right? As simple as that. That is all you got to do. The second thing you can do is you can just browse through the kind of questions there are. If there are a lot of specific detail, a lot of inference based questions, a lot of questions which are based on specific parts of the passage, attempt that later, right? Because those always take a greater amount of time. So just think on your feet. If it's a super tough test, you will have to identify, you will have to change your approach a little. It cannot be an attempt driven approach. Then you will have to moderate your expectations accordingly. Case number two, you don't like the content. There is one super positive way of looking at this. Now, if you find tests where you're just not comfortable with the kind of content that is featuring, that is actually great news for you. Now you know in your practice tests itself, right, that what are the kind of passages, what are the kind of RCs you don't like to solve. Once you know this, you can go back and read up more on these areas. You can prepare for these areas and you can do much better in these particular areas. So if you don't like the content, even though you might not score well, right, does not matter. As I keep repeating it, I know this would become a cliche by the time we end this series. No one is going to ask you what did you score in SimCAT 10, AIMCAT 15, section test 20. No one is going to ask you that. Only your CAT score matters, nothing else matters. So if you don't like the content, focus on the positive. Now you know what is it that you don't like to read. Please go and read that kind of content, right? Build your familiarity with it so that the next time you face such content, you are not in trouble. Thing number one. Thing number 2, how to deal with this situation in the test itself. Remember, going back and reading on the topic, that is something you do after the test. But what is it that you do in the test? One, you lower your expectations. It's as simple as that. If you don't like the material of the test, if you're not able to make sense of it, don't have expectations of yourself. Thing is, when we have these expectations of yourself, if I go and sit in a section test, say for example, it is in the new pattern, if it's for 75 marks, if I've gone in with this expectation, I need to score 50 today, and I go and read the RCs and I just don't feel happy about them. I feel as if I've never read this kind of material before, and then also I expect I'll score 50 marks. I am going to screw it up, right? My brain is going to get all muddled. So I lower my expectations. I don't push myself that hard. I start to focus on what I can solve, and I keep moving forward, right? At the risk of lowering your attempts, at the risk of getting comfortable with the test. Remember, we are dealing with an extreme scenario here. The extreme scenario is you are not liking the kind of content which is there in the test. It is this specific context I'm telling you about. So you just change your expectations a little. I'm not saying that you drop down to like say 5 attempts or 7 attempts, but you make sure you improve your question selection in such a particular scenario where you're not able to make sense of the test, right? Remember, our positive from this situation is you know the kind of things you don't like to read. You are going to go back and read in the next 50 days. You're going to go and read and explore this content. That is what you're going to do. That is how you fix the problem in the long term. So you have to fix it in the next 50 days. In the short term, in the test itself, you find ways to score as much as you can, even in tests that you don't like the content, even in tests where you are just not comfortable with the RCs, right? Now, case number 3, you are struggling on the day, you just don't feel good about anything in the world, you hate everything in the world, and you are taking this section test or mock, and you are doing terribly on that particular day. Well, as simple as that, just ignore this test. As I said earlier, no one is going to ever ask you for a section test or a mock score. We all have our bad days. It's okay to have a bad day, right? It's basic human tendency to have bad days. These are basic human attributes. You have your good days, you have your bad days. Just accept them, move on, move forward, analyze this test a couple of days later, see the fact that you could have easily solved the test and feel happy about it. You are at that level. Remember, the problem is of being at that level where you can solve the tests, right? So if you are at that level, please feel happy about that self. Pat yourself on the back. At times, positive reinforcements do work, right? So think of it in the positive sense. Okay, you had a bad day, you were not able to do well in the test itself, you can always come back to it later, right? So you can do this as far as practice is concerned. Ignore the scores, move forward. Now, to avoid this in the future, the key is you should not have a bad day on your D-Day, right? That is the key. How do you do that? You make sure that test taking, that is taking time tests, section tests, mocks, it becomes part of your habit, routine. It becomes an instinctive activity, right? It's a mental process that you should form. So taking a 40-minute section test, analyzing it for half an hour, this should be a default activity of yours. You should be able to do it at any given point of time. So take tests at different points of time in the day. Make sure you practice, you push yourself, you practice, you get into the habit of doing things, right? Once you do that, right, it should become a default process, right? So for example, it's extremely important to walk, exercise, do your workouts, eat healthy, so on and so forth, right? Those are all good habits in life. Now, the thing is, if you exercise for one day in a week, the rest of the 6 days, the effect of that one day might be there on the next day, but the following day, the effect is going to wear off. 1 week later, the effect of exercise so if you exercise last Sunday, this Sunday, you're not going to feel good about it, right? So you need to do it on a regular basis. So if you don't walk or exercise on a regular basis, you're not going to feel the effects. Similarly, if you don't solve tests on a regular basis, if you don't take section tests and mocks, and I know so many students who keep feeling that maybe I need to prepare a little more and then I will take tests. Please don't do that. That is what is leading to your struggles on the day. Take tests, make it part of your default process. You should be able to sit up, take a test, deliver, that's it, move on. That is what the kind of routine you should be able to build it. You should be able to build muscle memory, right? Muscle memory of taking tests. So that's what you should do. Once you do that, you will get super comfortable with taking tests. 3 cases, 3 possible outcomes and 3 possible ways of dealing with it. This is all I had to share with with you guys for today. I hope this video makes a lot of sense and you can use the practical tips that I've talked about today and you can apply these in your prep. Thank you very much for watching this video, and as always, happy learning.